What if the story of human history is not what we were taught? What if our ancestors knew secrets that connected Earth to the stars? Tonight, we uncover the interstellar mysteries of ancient civilizations, secrets hidden in stone, whispered in myths, and perhaps delivered by visitors not of this world. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see history forever. And remember, the videos and pictures you're seeing here is for extra context and enjoyment, but they're not necessary to follow along. Before we begin, do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment where you're listening from. You'll want to be part of this discussion, because the truth may be stranger than fiction. We begin. For thousands of years, civilizations across the globe, from Egypt to Mesopotamia, from the Mayans to the Dogon tribe of Africa, built monuments and crafted myths that all point to the same astonishing possibility. They were guided by the stars. But the real question is this: guided by whom? Let's begin with the Pyramids of Giza. These massive structures align almost perfectly with the constellation Orion. Coincidence? Or a celestial message carved into the desert sands? Ancient Egyptian texts speak of gods descending from the sky, beings of light and power, who brought knowledge far beyond their time. Were these gods actually visitors from beyond Earth? Now consider this. The Mayan calendar wasn't just a tool for agriculture. It mapped cycles of time with an accuracy modern scientists still struggle to explain. Who taught them to track the heavens so precisely? And what about the Dogon tribe of Mali, Africa? For centuries, they told stories of a star invisible to the naked eye, Sirius B. They knew it orbited Sirius A, and they even described its elliptical orbit. Here's the catch. Western astronomers only confirmed Sirius B in the 20th century using telescopes. How did the Dogon know? Oral tradition? Or an interstellar teacher? The pattern repeats across the globe. Ancient Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the sky, teaching humanity agriculture, mathematics, and law. In India, ancient Vedic texts describe Vimanas, flying chariots that thundered across the skies. In South America, Nazca Lines stretch across miles of desert, giant figures only visible from above. Were they primitive runways or messages to gods above? But here's where it gets chilling. Many of these cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, tell nearly identical stories of gods or strangers arriving from the stars. Why would civilizations with no contact share the same mythology? Unless they weren't myths at all. If ancient civilizations were indeed visited by extraterrestrial intelligences, the evidence wouldn't just be written in their myths. It would be carved in their stone, encoded in their architecture, preserved in their sky charts. So the question is not if humanity had contact, but why? Why do they come? Why leave us hints in our monuments? Why embed knowledge in civilizations that should never have had it? We may not have all the answers, but one thing is certain. The ancients were obsessed with the stars, and if their gods truly came from above, then the history of humanity is not the story of isolated tribes inventing tools. It is the story of a cosmic inheritance. Now, what if I told you there are clues even more shocking, waiting to be uncovered? Stay with me. We'll unravel the mystery of the Mayan temples, where the stone whispers secrets of star travelers. Deep in the jungles of Central America, hidden beneath centuries of vines and silence, lies the legacy of a people obsessed with time, the stars, and the very fabric of the cosmos. They were the Maya, masters of astronomy, mathematics, and prophecy. Did the Maya track not just the movements of the heavens, but the footsteps of visitors from beyond? The Maya weren't just timekeepers. They were cosmic historians. Their temples aligned perfectly with the sun, the moon, and the planets. Their calendars stretched thousands of years into the past and future. But here's the mystery. How could a civilization with no telescopes, no satellites, and no modern instruments measure time with such impossible precision? The calendar that defied time. The Mayan calendar is one of the most sophisticated ever created. Its long count system didn't just track years. It tracked entire cosmic cycles, stretching back billions of years. to times long before the Maya even existed. Let that sink in. A civilization that emerged around 2000 BC built a calendar that traced cosmic history before their own birth and extended into the distant future. But how? How could they know the grand rhythms of the universe? Cycles even our most advanced computers only recently confirmed. Here's where it gets stranger. On December 21st, 2012, the Mayan long count calendar ended one great cycle. The world held its breath, fearing apocalypse. But scholars of Mayan culture argued otherwise. To the Maya, the end wasn't destruction, it was renewal. A turning point, a return. The question remains, return of what or who? Chichen Itza, the Temple of Cosmic Serpents. Among the Maya's greatest monuments is Chichen Itza. At its heart stands the Temple of Kukulkan, a pyramid aligned so precisely with the equinox that twice a year, as the sun sets, a serpent of light appears to slither down its steps. Think about this. Hundreds of tons of stone, stacked with architectural genius, calibrated to the heavens so finely that a single beam of sunlight animates a stone serpent. To the Maya, this was no coincidence. This was communion with the gods. But what kind of gods require such cosmic theatrics? Were these gods simply symbolic, or were they a reminder of something greater? Beings who came from the skies and promised one day to return along the same cosmic path. Ancient texts describe Kukulkan as a feathered serpent, a being of wisdom and power descending from the heavens. Myth or memory of something real, something beyond our comprehension? The astronomy they shouldn't have known. The Maya calculated the length of a solar year with a margin of error smaller than modern calculations. They tracked Venus's movements across the sky with precision rivaling today's astronomers. Venus wasn't just a planet to them. It was a messenger, a celestial timekeeper guiding rituals and wars. But how? Without telescopes, how could they chart planets invisible to the naked eye for months at a time? How could they synchronize rituals with cosmic cycles spanning centuries? And here's where the enigma deepens. Their knowledge extended beyond astronomy into cosmology. They spoke of cycles of creation and destruction, epochs where gods descended, reshaped the earth, and vanished back into the stars. Did they know something we don't? Or did someone tell them? The prophecy of return. In the Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Mayan texts, the Maya wrote of floods, fire, and celestial upheaval. They spoke of gods who would return at the end of cycles, ushering in new ages. The question is, were these prophecies merely symbolic stories or carefully recorded warnings left by those who once visited? Were the Maya keeping time not just for themselves, but for the return of beings from the stars? Think about it. Why would a culture pour so much energy into building temples that aligned with solstices and equinoxes? Why would they carve calendars that spanned beyond human lifespans into cosmic ages, unless they were waiting, watching, and preparing? The mystery of the 9 Lords of the Night. The Maya believed in the 9 Lords of the Night, beings who presided over cycles of time. To them, the universe was governed not by chance, but by powerful entities beyond human control. Some researchers argue these lords weren't just mythological. What if they were descriptions of advanced beings, aliens, who visited in cycles, influencing civilizations before withdrawing into the shadows? If true, then the Maya weren't predicting myth. They were calculating the timetable of interstellar contact, a timetable we may already be living through. Cosmic architecture. Everywhere in Mayan architecture, the stars speak. At Uxmal, the Pyramid of the Magician rises in alignment with Venus. At Tikal, the towering temples rise above the jungle canopy, each placed with mathematical perfection to track celestial events. These were not random placements. These were cosmic blueprints, stone instruments built to resonate with the heavens. The Maya weren't just building cities. They were building observatories, calendars, and perhaps beacons, structures that spoke not to mortals below, but to gods above. A shared global pattern. And here's the hook. the Maya were not alone. Across the globe, civilizations from Egypt to Sumer to Stonehenge shared the same obsession, building monuments aligned with stars, planets, and solstices. Different people, different continents. The same message. The gods came from above, and they will return. Was this shared human imagination, or a shared human memory of visitors who once walked among us? So what do we make of the Mayan timekeepers? Were they brilliant astronomers who, through sheer dedication, mapped the universe with impossible accuracy? Or were they archivists of a greater truth, scribes recording the teachings of interstellar visitors? Their calendar doesn't just tell us about time. It tells us about cycles, beginnings, endings, returns. And the question that keeps researchers awake at night is this: what if the Mayan calendar wasn't just a record of time, but a countdown? In the next chapter, we travel back even further to the cradle of civilization itself. Mesopotamia, land of the Sumerians, a people who recorded in clay the arrival of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the stars. Were these the same beings who guided the Maya? And if so, what do they want from us? Long before Rome, long before Greece, long before the Pyramids of Egypt, there was a land known as Mesopotamia, the land between rivers. And here, in the fertile valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates, humanity built its first cities. But the Sumerians, who emerged here over 6,000 years ago, left behind something far stranger than just bricks and temples. They left stories, etched in clay, that describe gods who weren't born of earth, but who descended from the stars. Were these gods or visitors? The first civilization, the Sumerians, invented writing. They created the wheel. They established laws, mathematics, irrigation, and astronomy. Historians call them the first civilization, but the Sumerians themselves told a different story. They claimed their knowledge was not their own. It was given to them by beings called the Anunnaki. And here's where the mystery begins. The Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. According to Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were those who came from the heavens to the earth. They weren't vague spirits. They were described as tall, radiant beings, adorned in garments that shimmered, descending in fiery crafts. The tablets even detail their names, their roles, their purposes. Enlil, the commander. Enki, the teacher of knowledge. Ninhursag, the mother of creation. These weren't abstract myths. They were stories written with detail, consistency, and purpose, as if the Sumerians were recording history, not fantasy. But why would the first civilization on Earth insist their culture was built not by their own ingenuity, but by gods from the sky? The stargates, portals to the gods. The Sumerians built massive structures called ziggurats, step pyramids towering above the plains. Each one was said to be a stairway to the gods. Priests climbed them to commune with the Anunnaki. But some researchers believe these ziggurats may have been more than temples. They may have been stargates. A stargate, a portal, a place where sky gods descended and ascended. Sounds like science fiction? Consider this. In their tablets, the Sumerians described the heavens with startling accuracy. They listed planets invisible to the naked eye. They drew the solar system with the sun at its center, something Western science only confirmed in the last few centuries. So how did they know? Did they simply imagine it? Or did they learn it from beings who had traveled the stars? Forbidden knowledge in clay. Among the thousands of cuneiform tablets discovered, some tell stories that sound eerily familiar. A great flood wiping out humanity. A chosen man warned by the gods to build a vessel. Yes, the story of Noah in the Bible echoes the Sumerian tale of Utnapishtim, warned by the god Enki. These stories, carved thousands of years earlier, describe God's angry at humanity, wiping the slate clean. Were these simply myths passed down into other cultures? Or were the Sumerians documenting events witnessed alongside beings they considered gods? If so, what else did they record that we've ignored? The winged disc, symbol of flight. One of the most common symbols in Sumerian art is the winged disc. Scholars say it's a symbol of divinity. But look closer, wings, mechanical precision, being seated within. Could this be a primitive depiction of flying craft? And if so, were the Anunnaki not gods at all, but advanced beings traveling across worlds, descending in ships of fire? The king's lists and longevity. In another series of tablets, the Sumerians recorded their kings. But here's the bizarre part. Some kings were said to have reigned for tens of thousands of years. Impossible for humans. Unless these rulers weren't human at all. Unless they were Anunnaki, beings whose lifespans dwarfed our own. Why would the Sumerians invent such precise numbers if they were merely making myths? Why not simply say eternal or immortal? Why record specific reign lengths? 28,800 years, 36,000 years, unless these were memories of actual beings who ruled them. Science hidden in myth. The Sumerians described the Anunnaki not just as gods, but as beings who shaped humanity itself. According to their texts, the gods created humans to serve them, mixing the essence of the gods with creatures of Earth. Is this mythology? Or could it be an ancient description of genetic engineering? Long before humanity even knew what DNA was? The chilling part is this. Their texts describe humans as a project, a creation, something made, not born. And if that's true, who made us? And why? With ziggurats, stargates? Imagine this. A civilization building vast stone towers, not for defense, not for burial, but for connection. Towers aligned with the stars, rising like beacons. Were these ziggurats ritual stages, or technology disguised as architecture? Some researchers suggest the Anunnaki didn't simply descend from ships. They may have used ziggurats as energy points, gateways between dimensions, stargates allowing instant passage between worlds. Outlandish? Perhaps. But ask yourself, why would the Sumerians build mountains of stone to reach the heavens, unless someone had already descended from them? The global connection. And here is where the story widens. The Sumerians weren't alone. Across the world, other cultures also spoke of gods descending from the sky. The Maya with Kukulkan, the Egyptians with Ra, the Dogon with Namo. Different names, same story. What if these weren't separate myths, but fragments of a single truth? What if the Anunnaki, those who came from the heavens, were the same beings remembered under countless names? If so, then human civilization itself may not be the story of man's rise, but of man's guidance. History tells us the Sumerians vanished, absorbed by later empires. But their legacy remained, in language, in law, in religion, and maybe in hidden truths. If the Sumerians were telling the truth, then humanity's first civilization was not born alone. It was nurtured, guided, perhaps even engineered. And the ziggurats, standing tall against the desert sky, may not just be ruins of a forgotten people. They may be markers of contact, silent stargates awaiting a return. We travel back to Egypt, where the pyramids whisper secrets of the stars. Were the Great Pyramids tombs, or were they monuments designed to encode interstellar knowledge? And what did the pharaohs know about gods who descended from above? They rise from the sands like stone giants, timeless, unyielding. For over 4,500 years, the Pyramids of Giza have stood as guardians of a secret, a code carved not just in a stone, but into the stars. Historians tell us they were tombs, massive burial sites for pharaohs obsessed with immortality. But what if they were more? What if the pyramids are not simply monuments of death, but messages of life, a celestial code left behind for us to decipher? And tonight we're going to decode it. The impossible precision. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the largest of them all, was built with 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons. Its sides are aligned almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. Think about that. Even with today's technology, aligning a structure that massive with that kind of accuracy would be a staggering feat, but the Egyptians did it 4,500 years ago with copper chisels, ropes, and sledges, or so we're told. But here's the enigma. The alignment isn't just earthly, it's celestial. The three pyramids of Giza are aligned with the three stars of Orion's belt: Mintaka, Alnilam, and allen attack. Coincidence? Or a cosmic blueprint? The Orion Mystery. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, who they believed lived among the stars of Orion. The pyramids then were not just tombs. They were gateways, launch pads for the pharaoh's soul to return to the stars. But here's the question: why build such colossal structures for the journey of the soul? Unless those journeys were more than symbolic? Could the pyramids have been designed as literal star maps, markers showing a connection between Earth and Orion? The hidden chambers. For centuries, the pyramids were thought to be fully explored. But in 2017, scientists used cosmic ray scans to peer inside the Great Pyramid. What they found stunned the world. Hidden chambers, vast and unexplored, still sealed after thousands of years. Why would the Egyptians hide chambers? Why build secret voids into a structure meant to honor a king? Unless these chambers weren't for kings at all. Some researchers speculate these voids may conceal knowledge, artifacts, scrolls, perhaps even technology. Could they be repositories of interstellar secrets sealed away for a future generation to find? The pyramid as a machine. The Great Pyramid isn't just precise, it's mathematical. Its dimensions encode constants like pi and the golden ratio. Its height compared to its base equals the ratio of Earth's circumference to its radius. Let me say that again. A pyramid built thousands of years ago encodes the dimensions of the Earth itself. How did the Egyptians know the Earth's size, when Western science only confirmed it much later? Some theorists suggest the pyramid was not just a monument, it was a machine, designed to resonate with the planet's frequencies, channeling energy, perhaps even communicating with the stars. Impossible? Maybe. But then again, how do we explain the undeniable mathematics carved into stone? The Sphinx in the sky. And then there's the Sphinx sitting beside the pyramids, silent and watchful. It faces east, aligned to the rising sun on the equinox. But some argue its weathering patterns suggest it is far older than the pyramids themselves, perhaps 10,000 years old. If true, this rewrites history. It means Egyptian civilization inherited monuments from a forgotten age, a pre-cataclysmic time. And what does the Sphinx gaze at? Some argue it once faced the constellation Leo around 10,500 BC, long before Egyptian civilization as we know it. Why would a structure that ancient align with the stars, unless its builders were obsessed with something beyond Earth? The pharaohs and their sky gods. Egyptian texts speak of the Nedjeru, gods who descended from the sky. They taught writing, agriculture, and architecture. They ruled alongside men, then departed back to the heavens. Sound familiar? The Sumerians called them Anunnaki. The Dogon called them Namo. The Maya called them Kukulkan. Different names. Same story. Were the Nedjeru not gods at all, but the same interstellar beings remembered across the globe? And if the pyramids were built under their guidance, what were they meant to signal? The pyramids' strange energies. In 2018, a team of physicists discovered that the Great Pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy into its chambers. This isn't speculation, it's science. Why would a tomb be built to channel energy? Unless it wasn't just a tomb. Unless it was a kind of power station. A beacon. Was the pyramid designed to broadcast messages to the stars? Or perhaps to receive them? The global connection again. Once more, the pattern emerges. The pyramids align with Orion. The Mayan temples align with Venus. Stonehenge aligns with solstices. Göbekli Tepe aligns with constellations. Different continents, different builders, same obsession, the heavens. Were all these civilizations guided by the same knowledge, the same teachers, the same code written into the stars? And if so, why were they guiding us? What was the purpose of this cosmic code? The forbidden chamber theory. Some Egyptologists whisper of a hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx's paw. Scans suggest there is indeed a void there. What lies inside? A library? A time capsule? Or something more dangerous? If the ancients sealed knowledge there, what were they trying to preserve? And more importantly, what were they trying to warn us about? The pyramids are not simply stone. They are stories in geometry, codes in mathematics, messages in light. To dismiss them as mere tombs is to ignore the questions they demand we ask. Why such precision? Why such alignments? Why hide chambers? Unless the pyramids were never meant to be explained by history books. Unless they were meant to be understood only when we were ready. We leave the deserts of Egypt and soar across the seas to Peru, where giant geoglyphs stretch across miles of desert floor. Patterns visible only from the sky. Whether Nazca Lines mirror art or messages to gods above. Stay with me, because the closer we look, the louder the stars seem to whisper. In the desolate deserts of southern Peru, where rainfall is almost non-existent and the land lies parched for eternity, a great mystery sprawls across the earth itself. Massive lines stretching for miles, shapes of animals, spirals, humanoid figures, all etched into the ground. Too large to be seen properly from the ground, but stunningly clear from the sky. These are the Nazca Lines, and for centuries, they have begged the same question. Who were these messages meant for? The desert canvas. The Nazca people flourished between 200 BC and 600 AD. They were skilled in pottery, irrigation, and weaving. But their greatest legacy wasn't a temple or a pyramid. It was a desert-sized canvas. Etched into the arid plateau are over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric shapes, and nearly 70 animal figures. From hummingbirds to spiders, from monkeys to fish, gigantic drawings only visible from high above. Here's the puzzle. Why would a people with no known form of flight create artwork only the gods could see? Messages to the sky. The lines can stretch for several miles, perfectly straight. Some form massive trapezoids, pointing toward the horizon. Others form spirals or arrows. To some researchers, these are ritual paths walked by priests in ceremonies. But others see something stranger. From above, many of these shapes resemble runways. Long, flat strips carved into the desert, stretching across the horizon like landing paths. Were the Nazca Lines giant altars of devotion? Or were they, as some theorists suggest, messages to sky gods? And if they were, the question becomes, did those gods answer? The astronaut in the desert. Among the Nazca designs, one figure stands out. It doesn't look like a hummingbird or a monkey. It looks human. A massive humanoid figure with exaggerated eyes, standing on the desert hillside, waving to the heavens. Scholars call it the astronaut. But why would a pre-industrial culture draw what looks like a space traveler? Was it myth, symbol, or memory of something they actually saw descend from the skies? The impossibility of scale. The largest Nazca figures span more than 1,000 feet across. To carve them, the Nazca scraped away the top layer of red pebbles, exposing lighter earth beneath. But here's the enigma. These designs are almost impossible to recognize from ground level. Standing on the desert floor, they look like random lines. Only from the sky do the pictures emerge. So why create art that no one on Earth could fully see? Unless the intended audience wasn't on Earth at all. The celestial alignments. Some of the Nazca lines align with solstices and constellations. The trapezoids appear to point toward astronomical events, the rising and setting of stars. The spider, for instance, is thought to be linked with the constellation Orion, the monkey with the Pleiades, the hummingbird with the path of the sun. This wasn't random. This was a map, a cosmic message carved into the land. The question is, who was it meant for? The gods? The stars? Or someone watching from above? The ritual theory. Mainstream archaeology suggests the Nazca Lines were sacred pathways. Priests may have walked them during rituals to call down rain. After all, this desert is bone dry. Water meant survival. But if the lines were simply prayers for rain, why make them visible only from the sky? Why such enormous precision? Why draw a figure of an astronaut? What if the rituals weren't just for the rain? What if they were for communication? Runways of the gods. Here's the controversial theory. The trapezoid-shaped lines resemble landing strips. Long, flat, wide enough for something to descend upon. Of course, There's no evidence of planes in ancient Peru. But what if these weren't runways for human craft? What if they were signals, markers, guiding something from above to land? Imagine standing in that desert 1,500 years ago, the sun blazing, the earth trembling, and then a craft descending upon those lines. To the Nazca, it would have been a god. To us, it would have been contact, a worldwide pattern again. The Nazca weren't alone. Across the globe, we've seen the same obsession with aligning monuments to the heavens. Egypt, Sumer, the Maya, and now, in Peru, lines carved into the earth that speak only to the sky. How do we explain the same pattern repeated across civilizations that never met? Unless these were not separate obsessions. Unless they were fragments of a single story, a story written across continents by beings who span the stars. The Nazca sacrifices. The Nazca were not only artists, they were ritualists. Archaeologists have found evidence of sacrifices, sometimes human, performed near the lines. To them, the gods weren't abstract. They were real, and they demanded offerings. But who were these gods? Were they natural forces, or beings who had once descended, leaving their mark on the desert, demanding loyalty, and perhaps promising to return? The whisper in the dust. For centuries, the Nazca Lines lay hidden, preserved only by the desert's dryness. They were rediscovered by modern aviation in the 1920s, pilots flying overhead, stunned to see massive drawings staring back at them. It's almost as if the lines were waiting for humanity to rise into the skies once again to see what the ancients had left behind. Was this coincidence or prophecy? Did the Nazca know that one day humans would finally rise to the heavens? And when we look down, we would find their message. The suspense that remains. The Nazca Lines defy simple explanation. Art? Ritual? Astronomy? Or something greater? Perhaps they were prayers etched in stone. Perhaps they were maps for gods. Perhaps they were warnings we have yet to decode. What we do know is this. The lines were not meant for those walking on the earth. They were meant for those looking from above. And that changes everything. We journey to India, a land of ancient texts that speak not of lines or pyramids, but of machines. Machines that flew, machines that thundered, machines called Vimanas. Were these myths or eyewitness accounts of alien technology in the skies of ancient India? In the sacred texts of India, the Vedas and the epics of the Mahabharata and Ramayana, there are stories that defy simple explanation. They tell of beings who came from the heavens. But unlike other myths, these stories don't just speak of gods descending in beams of light. They speak of machines. Machines that flew. Machines that thundered. Machines called Vimanas. And the deeper you look into these texts, the more impossible the descriptions become. Because these weren't just myths. They read like blueprints. What is a Vimana? The word Vimana in Sanskrit translates to measured out or flying palace. In the texts, they are described as aerial vehicles used by gods and heroes. Some are chariots pulled by celestial horses, but others were metallic crafts, self-propelled, capable of moving in any direction, up, down, forward, backward, without wings or wheels. The Ramayana describes one Vimana called the Pushpika Vimana, a flying palace that shone brightly, rising into the sky, moving with the speed of the wind. These weren't just symbols. They were descriptions. Detailed, mechanical, unmistakable. The blueprints in the texts. In the Samarangana Sutradhara, a 1,200-year-old Sanskrit text, there are passages that read like technical manuals. They speak of machines made of lightweight materials, powered by mercury engines. Yes, you heard that right. Mercury. The text describes heated mercury creating propulsion strong enough to lift the craft into the air. Think about that. Ancient texts describing propulsion thousands of years before the Wright brothers ever dreamed of flight. Were these priests and poets imagining science fiction or recording something they had witnessed? The Mahabharata's aerial wars. But the descriptions go further. In the epic Mahabharata, Vimanas weren't just peaceful chariots. They were weapons of war. The text describes great battles fought in the skies, where Vimanas fired projectiles that produced blinding light, scorching heat, and devastation resembling nuclear blasts. Entire cities were said to have been reduced to ash in moments. Listen to this chilling passage. It was as if all the forces of the universe were unleashed. The sun turned dark, the earth shook, and corpses were burned so that they were unrecognizable. Does that sound like myth? Or does it sound eerily like an eyewitness account of advanced weapons, thousands of years before modern warfare? The question of Mercury. Back to the Mercury engines. Archaeologists have discovered ancient sites in India where large pools of mercury were preserved in sealed chambers. Why? Scholars struggle to explain it. But if we take the text literally, mercury wasn't symbolic. It was fuel. Fuel for Vimanas. And here's the eerie part. Modern experiments show mercury plasma can, under certain conditions, create powerful magnetic fields and lift objects. It's unstable, dangerous, but possible. So were the ancients imagining or experimenting? And if they were experimenting, who taught them how? Temples as launch pads? Some Hindu temples are designed in towering, layered shapes that look uncannily like rockets. Were these purely symbolic, reaching for the heavens? Or were they imitations of what the ancients saw? Imagine villagers thousands of years ago watching a luminous craft descending from the clouds. What would they do? They would worship it. They would carve it into stone. They would build temples in its image. And if those beings promised to return, they would spend generations keeping the memory alive. The global echo. And once again, the pattern repeats. The Egyptians with their pyramids aligned to Orion. The Sumerians with their Anunnaki descending in fiery craft. The Nazca with their runways etched into the desert. And here in India, the ancients described not just gods, but their machines. Different continents, different languages, the same story. Beings who descended from the skies in blazing vehicles. Beings who taught, ruled, and fought wars before vanishing back into the cosmos. Were they visitors or survivors? Here's a chilling question. Were Vimanas evidence of alien visitors, or the remnants of a lost human civilization? What if thousands of years ago humanity was already advanced? What if cataclysms destroyed those civilizations, leaving only scattered memories, myths of flying palaces and weapons of fire? Could the Vimanas have been the final echoes of Atlantis, Lemuria, or another forgotten world? Or were they truly alien, machines from another star system, remembered as the chariots of gods? Ancient testimony or ancient imagination? Mainstream scholars dismiss Vimanas as poetic symbolism. They argue the ancients wrapped their spiritual truths in metaphor. But skeptics can't explain the technical detail. They can't explain why propulsion, mercury, and advanced mechanics appear in texts supposedly written by priests, not scientists. Why would spiritual hymns describe aerial battles, flying machines, and nuclear devastation? Unless the ancients weren't imagining, unless they were recording the prophecy of return. The Vedas also speak of cycles of time, yugas, ages where gods walk among men, then depart, leaving humanity to rise and fall until the cycle begins again. What if Vimanas weren't just relics of the past? What if the texts are warnings that those machines and those who flew them will return? And if they return, what will they bring? Peace or war? The Vimanas of India stand as one of the most provocative mysteries in ancient history. Were they divine symbols? Myths spun from imagination? Or detailed memories of technology that should not have existed thousands of years ago? One truth is undeniable. The ancients of India believed the heavens were alive with movement, with machines, with gods who thundered across the sky. And the question we must ask is this: were they wrong? Or are we the ones who have forgotten? We return to Africa, to a remote tribe who, for centuries, told a story about a star no human eye could see. They called their visitors the Namo, and what they knew about the heavens defied possibility. Stay with me, because the Dogon enigma may be the clearest evidence yet of interstellar contact. In the heart of West Africa, among the cliffs of Mali, lives a people whose traditions hold one of the most baffling enigmas in human history. They're the Dogon, farmers, storytellers, custodians of knowledge passed down for centuries. And their stories tell of visitors who came from the stars, specifically the Sirius star system. But here's the impossible part. The Dogon knew secrets about Sirius that modern science would only confirm in the 20th century. The knowledge they shouldn't have had. The Dogon told a star they called Ptolo. According to them, it was small, invisible, and incredibly heavy. They said it orbited the bright star Sirius every 50 years. Let's pause here. Sirius is visible to the naked eye, one of the brightest stars in the sky. But Sirius has a companion star, a white dwarf called Sirius B. It cannot be seen without a telescope. It is tiny, dense, and yes, it takes about 50 years to orbit Sirius A. Western astronomers only discovered Sirius B in 1862. Its density was confirmed in the 20th century. So how did the Dogon know this centuries earlier? The Namo, visitors from the stars. The Dogon don't just describe Sirius. They describe the beings who came from there. They call them the Namo, amphibious, fish-like beings who descended from the sky in a great craft that landed with fire and thunder. The Namo, they said, taught humanity knowledge, agriculture, weaving, the stars. They lived among the Dogon, then returned to the heavens, promising to one day return again. Does this sound like mythology? Or contact? The astronomical detail. But the mystery deepens. The Dogon also spoke of a third star in the Sirius system, Sirius C. For decades, astronomers laughed at the claim. But in 1995, French astronomers announced evidence of a faint, small companion. Exactly what the Dogon had described. Coincidence? Or confirmation? The Dogon also knew about Saturn's rings, long before telescopes. They described the Milky Way as a spiral galaxy, centuries before science confirmed it. How? How could an isolated tribe in Mali know the architecture of the cosmos? The anthropological shock. In the 1930s, French anthropologists Marcel Griaule and Germain Dieterlen lived among the Dogon for over a decade. They recorded the tribe's oral traditions in detail. At first, scholars dismissed the stories as exaggerations, but the precision was undeniable. The Dogon weren't vague. They described orbits, densities, and cycles in ways far too exact for coincidence. And remember, this was a pre-literate culture. They had no telescopes, no contact with modern astronomy. So where did this knowledge come from? Skepticism and counterarguments. Of course, skeptics argue that the Dogon could have learned this information from visiting Europeans before the 20th century. But here's the problem. Sirius B wasn't visible until the late 19th century. Even professional astronomers debated its properties for decades. And yet, the Dogon had already encoded its orbit and density in their oral tradition. So were they influenced or remembering? The rituals of the stars. Every 60 years, the Dogon celebrate the Sigüe festival, a ritual tied directly to the orbit of Sirius B. The timing matches their belief in the star's 50-year cycle. For them, this isn't abstract astronomy. It is living tradition, ritual, connection. The Sigüe isn't just about the stars. It's about the return of the Namo. Imagine a people waiting, not for rain, not for harvest, but for visitors from beyond the earth. For the return of their cosmic teachers. The global connection once again. And once again, the pattern repeats. Egyptians aligned their pyramids to Orion. Sumerians wrote of Anunnaki descending from the heavens. The Maya worshipped Venus. The Nazca carved runways for gods. And here, the Dogon told stories of beings from Sirius. Different continents, different centuries. The same story. Gods or visitors who came from the stars, gave knowledge, and left promises of return. The chilling possibility. So let's ask the question directly. Were the Namo real? If so, then humanity has already been contacted. Contact didn't happen in modern times. It happened in the distant past, remembered in myths and rituals. And if the Dogon are right, then contact wasn't a one-time event. the Namo promised to return, which means they're still out there. The Dogon enigma is one of the most difficult to explain away. Their knowledge of Sirius is too precise, too early, too impossible. Either they somehow gained access to knowledge no one else had, or they were told by visitors who came down from the sky, taught them, and then departed. So the question becomes, if the Namo came once, what's stopping them from coming again? We travel to England, to a circle of stone rising against the horizon. A monument so old, its purpose remains a mystery. Was Stonehenge simply a calendar for farmers? Or was it a celestial observatory built to preserve alien-taught knowledge? Stay with me, because the stones of Stonehenge may hold the echoes of gods who once walked the earth. On a lonely plain in England, rising from the grass like the bones of forgotten giants, stands one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world, Stonehenge. For thousands of years, people have asked the same questions. Who built it? Why? And how did a prehistoric people, with no metal tools and no wheels, transport stones weighing up to 25 tons from miles away and set them in perfect circles? The answers, historians say, are ritual, religion, and community. But Stonehenge holds another, deeper enigma, because these stones don't just sit on the earth. They point to the heavens. The impossible construction. The first thing to understand is scale. Stonehenge wasn't built overnight. It was built in stages, beginning more than 5,000 years ago. Massive sarsen stones were dragged nearly 20 miles. The smaller blue stones, still weighing several tons, came from Wales over 150 miles away. How did they do it? The official answer: ropes, sledges, wooden rollers, and sheer human labor. But the truth is, archaeologists still don't know. Transporting those stones across rivers and hills was a feat even with modern cranes and trucks. Setting them upright, balancing horizontal lintels on vertical uprights, required engineering precision that seems beyond Stone Age farmers. And yet they did it. Or did they? The celestial alignments. Every year, on the summer solstice, the rising sun shines directly through the heel stone into the center of Stonehenge. On the winter solstice, the sun sets in perfect alignment with the stones on the opposite side. This isn't chance. Stonehenge was a solar calendar, but it's more than that. The placement of the stones also aligns with lunar cycles. Some researchers argue it tracks eclipses, predicting them centuries in advance. Others say it maps the 18.6-year lunar nodal cycle, something most cultures didn't recognize until modern astronomy. So here's the question. How did Neolithic people know? How did they map the heavens with this kind of precision, without telescopes, without writing, without so-called advanced knowledge? Unless, of course, someone showed them. The Stargate theory. Some researchers believe Stonehenge was more than an observatory. They believe it was a gateway, a stargate. The arrangement of the stones, combined with solstice light, lunar cycles, and resonance, could have been used in rituals to summon or communicate with beings from beyond. Was Stonehenge a primitive telephone to the gods? Or was it something greater, a cosmic clock, a beacon, a portal? After all, the builders didn't just drag stones. They carved a machine in stone, a machine calibrated to the sky. The missing builders. And here's the enigma that deepens the mystery. The people who built Stonehenge left no written records. Their culture vanished. We don't even know their names. It's as if the monument mattered more than they did. As if they were driven, compelled, to build something they themselves didn't fully understand. Were they building it for themselves? Or were they building it for someone else? The astronomical code. In the 1960s, astronomer Gerald Hawkins used computers to analyze Stonehenge. He found over 165 separate alignments with celestial events, sunrises, sunsets, moonrises, moonsets, eclipses. Stonehenge, he concluded, wasn't just a monument. It was a computer in stone, a device for tracking time, predicting eclipses, and aligning Earth with the cosmos. But think about this. Why would Stone Age farmers need to predict eclipses with such precision? Why would they need to encode astronomical cycles spanning decades, or even centuries? unless they weren't doing it for farming, unless they were doing it for contact. The sound and energy mystery. Stonehenge isn't just visual, it's acoustic. Step into the circle and speak, and the stones echo your voice. Some researchers believe the stones were positioned to amplify sound, turning rituals into otherworldly experiences. Even stranger, some of the blue stones are slightly magnetic, resonating when struck. Could Stonehenge have been designed to channel not only light, but sound and energy? And if so, who taught them to harness Earth's natural frequencies? The global echo. And once again, the pattern emerges. The pyramids aligned to Orion. The Maya temples aligned to Venus. The Dogon rituals tied to Sirius. And here, in England, the stones aligned to solstices, eclipses, and the movements of the heavens. Different cultures, same obsession. Were all these civilizations independently creating giant calendars? Or were they following instructions left by the same interstellar teachers? The Druid connection? Centuries later, the Druids, the priestly class of the Celts, were said to use Stonehenge for their ceremonies. But archaeological evidence shows Stonehenge was built long before the Druids ever existed. So who were the original builders? Why did their culture vanish after erecting this monument? Some theorists suggest the Druids were inheritors, using a monument they didn't create but recognized as sacred. But if Stonehenge was inherited, who built it first? And for what purpose? The forbidden purpose. Mainstream archaeology says Stonehenge was about fertility, ritual, and marking the seasons. But the precision of its alignments, the difficulty of its construction, and the fact that it tracks events no farmer would need suggests something else. It suggests Stonehenge was not just a temple to the sun, but a message to the stars. A cosmic clock, a reminder to look up, not down. And perhaps the beacon. A beacon that says, we were here, we are waiting, come back. Stonehenge remains one of the greatest riddles of human history. Why such precision? Why such obsession with the heavens? Why build something so massive and enduring, only to leave no written word explaining it? Unless the explanation was never meant for us. Unless the explanation was meant for those watching from above. And if that's true, then Stonehenge isn't just a ruin. It's a message, a clock still ticking, a reminder that time, and perhaps contact, is inevitable. We look beyond monuments to the lost civilizations themselves. Atlantis, Göbekli Tepe, forgotten worlds that seem to rise suddenly, achieve impossible feats, and vanish without a trace. Were they destroyed by nature or silenced by something greater? And most importantly, were they guided by the same interstellar beings whose fingerprints we've seen carved across the earth? History tells us civilization began 6,000 years ago with Sumer. But what if history is wrong? What if long before Egypt, long before Mesopotamia, long before written words and recorded kings, there were civilizations that rose, achieved impossible feats, and vanished? Civilizations that didn't just worship the stars, but were guided by them. The myth of Atlantis. Plato spoke of a great island civilization, Atlantis, advanced in knowledge, rich in power, and proud in spirit. Until one night, it was destroyed by floods and fire, sinking beneath the sea. Mainstream historians dismiss Atlantis as allegory, but the myth persists across cultures. Floods destroying ancient worlds, survivors carrying fragments of knowledge to rebuild. But what if Atlantis wasn't just myth? What if it was one of many civilizations wiped away by cataclysm, leaving only whispers in myth and stone? And here's the unsettling thought. If Atlantis was real, where did its knowledge come from? Did it rise by human genius alone, or by guidance from beyond? Göbekli Tepe, the first temple. In southeastern Turkey, a discovery shocked the world. Massive stone pillars arranged in circles. Carvings of animals, symbols, constellations. This is Göbekli Tepe, carbon dated to 12,000 years ago. That's 7,000 years before the pyramids. Before writing, before farming. It shouldn't exist, yet it does. Hunter-gatherers, we are told, had no agriculture, no cities, no advanced tools. And yet, they somehow built a complex temple aligned with the stars. Why and how? Some researchers argue Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple. It was a message, a connection between earth and sky, a reminder of a forgotten time when humanity walked with gods or with visitors from beyond. The sudden leap of knowledge. Here's the puzzle. Human progress is usually slow. Stone tools, fire, farming, gradual steps. But the archaeological record shows sudden leaps. Civilizations appear almost overnight with writing, astronomy, mathematics, and monumental architecture. Why? Why does knowledge erupt like fire, then vanish again into darkness? Unless it wasn't created from scratch. Unless it was inherited. The flood myths. Across the globe, cultures tell the same story, a flood that destroyed the world. The Bible speaks of Noah, the Sumerians of Utnapishtim, the Aztecs of the gods sending water, the Hindus of Manu surviving a great deluge. Different continents, same myth. Could this be memory, not metaphor? A real event, erasing civilizations, forcing survivors to start anew? And if so, were those survivors carrying fragments of alien-taught knowledge into the next age? Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, names given to forgotten worlds. Are they myths or echoes of civilizations erased by cataclysm and by silence? The ancient engineers. Consider this. We still can't explain how some of the world's megaliths were built. The 1,200-ton stone at Baalbek in Lebanon, cut and moved without cranes. The precision-cut blocks at Pumapunku in Bolivia, shaped with angles so perfect they resemble laser cuts. These aren't primitive works. They're feats even modern engineers struggle to replicate. So who built them? And why did they vanish, leaving no record of their tools, their blueprints, their methods? Unless those methods weren't theirs. The vanishing act. Here's the chilling part. Many of these lost civilizations seem to vanish suddenly. No gradual decline, no slow decay. One moment they flourish. The next, they are gone. The Olmecs in Mesoamerica, the builders of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley, the people of Easter Island, vanished. Some say famine, flood, war. But what if the truth is more disturbing? What if they weren't destroyed, but silenced? Silenced because they knew too much. Silenced because their teachers, whoever they were, left, pulling their knowledge with them. The forgotten connections. When we connect the dots, the picture becomes clear. Atlantis, a myth of an advanced world destroyed. Göbekli Tepe, a temple built before farming. Flood myths, global memory of a cataclysm. Baalbek, Pumapunku, Easter Island, monuments with no explanation. Each is an isolated mystery, but together they form a pattern. A story of civilizations rising, guided by knowledge they shouldn't have had, then falling into silence. And the same fingerprints appear again and again. Obsession with the stars. So what are we left with? Either history is far older, far stranger, and far more advanced than we've been told, or humanity has been guided again and again by beings from beyond. Beings who came, gave knowledge, demanded devotion, and then disappeared, leaving behind only ruins. Only myths, only questions, the warning in the ruins. And here's the question no one dares to ask. Were these lost civilizations destroyed by accident or by design? Were they victims of nature, floods, quakes, fire, or were they erased to prevent humanity from discovering too much, too soon? If the monuments are messages, what are they saying? And if they're warnings, what are they warning us about? We return to the present. To governments releasing files of UFOs, to sightings that defy physics, to questions that can no longer be silenced. Were the ancients preparing us for a return? And if so, the question isn't whether we've been visited before. The question is, are we next? For thousands of years, humanity has looked to the heavens with wonder and fear. Egyptians aligned their pyramids with Orion. The Maya tracked Venus with impossible accuracy. The Dogon spoke of Sirius B centuries before telescopes. The Sumerians described gods descending in blazing craft. The Nazca carved runways across the desert floor. The ancients built calendars, monuments, and myths, all pointing upward. The question we've asked throughout this journey is simple. Were they alone? And now, in our time, another question emerges. Are we next? The modern sightings. In 2004, U.S. Navy pilots reported a tic-tac-shaped object off the coast of California. It defied gravity, accelerated from 0 to thousands of miles per hour, and vanished into the sky, with no visible engines, no wings, no heat signatures. In 2020, the Pentagon officially declassified the footage. They didn't call it a weather balloon. They didn't call it a trick of light. They called it what it was, an unidentified aerial phenomenon. And it wasn't the first. Across the globe, thousands of sightings have been reported. Some captured on radar, some caught on video. Objects that defy physics. Objects that behave exactly like the Vimanas of India. Exactly like the fiery chariots of the Sumerians. Exactly like the blazing crafts the Dogon described. The government disclosures. In 2021, the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a report. Out of 144 documented sightings, they could explain only one. The rest remain unexplained. And yet, governments are careful with their words. They admit these objects exist. They admit they are not ours. But they stop short of saying what they really are. Why? Are they hiding the truth? Or are they as afraid as we are to face it? And here's the haunting possibility. What if the truth is not new? What if the truth is ancient? What if governments today know what civilizations thousands of years ago already knew? The return? The ancients didn't just describe visitors. They described cycles. The Mayas spoke of ages ending and beginning with the return of gods. The Vedas told of yugas, cycles of time where beings descended, then vanished. The Dogon ritual repeats every 60 years, marking the orbit of Sirius B and the promised return of the Namo. Were they just myths or countdowns? And if they were countdowns, then maybe the question isn't whether they'll return. Maybe the question is, when? The warning in the ruins. Consider this. The ancients may have left us more than monuments. They may have left us warnings. The Mayan calendar didn't end in apocalypse. It marked renewal. The Egyptian pyramids encoded the dimensions of the earth and alignments with Orion. Stonehenge tracked eclipses and solstices across centuries. Göbekli Tepe preserved constellations older than farming itself. Were these just calendars and temples, or survival manuals? Manuals designed to prepare us for what's coming? And here's the chilling part. What if the lost civilizations weren't simply victims of nature? What if they were civilizations erased during previous contacts? Civilizations that saw too much or refused to obey? The technology question. Modern science still cannot replicate the precision of ancient monuments. We struggle to cut stones like those at Puma Punku. We debate how the Egyptians lifted blocks into place. We wonder why the Nazca made runways only gods could see. But what if we're asking the wrong question? What if the ancients weren't trying to show us their power, but the power of their teachers? And if those teachers return, will we recognize them? Or will we mistake them once again for gods? The prophecy of silence. Here's what unsettles researchers most. The ancients didn't just say the gods came. They said the gods left and promised to come back. But they left no dates, no warnings, only hints hidden in cycles, calendars, and rituals. So we ask again, are the increasing sightings across our skies today not accidents, but preludes? Preludes to something that's already in motion? And if that's true, then history isn't just repeating. It's accelerating. Let's put it together. Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki descending from the heavens. Egyptians aligned their pyramids with Orion. The Dogon described Sirius B, invisible to the naked eye. The Maya tracked cosmic cycles with precision beyond comprehension. The Nazca carved messages visible only from the sky. India described flying Vimanas and weapons of fire. Stonehenge tracked eclipses and solstices across millennia. Lost civilizations built monuments so advanced they defy replication. Everywhere, the same story: we were not alone. And if the sightings of today are what they seem, then the story is not finished. The story is beginning again. So the question isn't were we visited? The question is, are we about to be visited again? And if we are, what will they bring this time? Guidance or judgment? The ancients left us messages in stone, in myth, in ritual. But they also left us a responsibility to look up, to ask questions, to prepare. The past may not just be history. It may be a warning. So I leave you with this. If the skies open tomorrow and the visitors return, what side of history will we be on? The side that ignores the warnings? Or the side that finally listens? If this journey left you questioning history, don't stop here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe? Were the ancients in contact with interstellar beings? And are we next? Your voice matters in this discussion. The truth may not come from governments. It may come from all of us, asking the questions they don't want us to ask. History isn't written only in books. It's written in the stars, the stones, and the secrets left behind. What do you believe? Were ancient civilizations guided by aliens, or are we chasing shadows? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your theories. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who dares to question history. This is not the end. This is only the beginning.